let's delve further into the event. Joining us in the studio tonight is Ken Gichinga. He's the chief economist at Mentoria Economics. Very welcome to the show, Ken.
Thanks for having me, Uche.
Well, we do know that President Xi did announce the country plans to ease barriers to trade in several industries, which of course is a great thing for Africa going forward. So many are looking at this expo as a chance to open up those doors. What are your thoughts on the significance of the event?
That was a historic event that we saw yesterday. For the first time in 40 years, we are seeing China pursuing a very interesting economic direction. For the last 40 years, China has been pursuing an export-led growth strategy. What does that mean? It means pretty much take advantage of the cheap Chinese labor, manufacture equipment, and sell it to the rest of the world. And that has really been to China's advantage. That said, it's run into various problems. Number one, China now has a trade surplus over almost every other country in the world. It has a trade surplus of over $300 billion with the United States, and that's causing a lot of political friction. And number two, labor rates in China are not as low as they used to be. Right now, the average dollar rate is about $3.60 per hour, and that's almost 3 times of what it was in 2011. So that model in itself has run its course, and China now is rethinking the next model, which is let's start importing, let's reduce the political friction we are seeing with the West, and for the first time, let's start taking advantage of rising wages in our country to start importing and rebalancing those trade balances.
Now, of course, we did see Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta give this exact appeal to the leaders when he spoke at the opening ceremony. He said he would like to see China give preferential treatment to African goods. He also mentioned the fact that there are quite a number of trade imbalances between Kenya and China, even though China is one of Kenya's biggest trading partners, or its largest trading partner, actually. So what are your thoughts on his appeal?
He was very strategic. He anchored that conversation on the big four, which is really, he's focused on agriculture, manufacturing, affordable housing, and universal health care. So he was very strategic to steer that conversation towards his big four agenda, which I thought was very interesting. More than that, he went into the specifics, because one of the challenges Kenya has had in exporting agricultural produce is it's not met the standards that Beijing demands. The technical term for that has been phytosanitary standards. So what President Kenyatta did, he said, give us the technical assistance to help us improve the quality of our agricultural produce, which can later be accepted into the Chinese market. So he's saying, you know, give us money that can go into the technical institutions like KEFIS, Kenya Plant Health Institutions in Karen, which can help farmers meet the phytosanitary standards that Chinese agricultural authorities require, then that should be the way. So I think it was a far more focused strategy. He also talked about our manufacturing, that being the second pillar of the big four. And we're already seeing commitments. We are seeing Keda Ceramics, one of the largest ceramics tiles companies in the world, opening up in Kajiado. We are seeing one of the world's largest silk providers also opening up in Kenya, while it's still in Beijing. So I think it's something that has been running up with previous conversations, and I think they are lined up very nicely.
Now, going back to China, and of course the role that this event has played, a lot of people or a lot of countries have criticized China for being quite protectionist. Do you think this event has changed that perception?
It absolutely has changed it. This is the world's first international import conference. And that's the first thing President Xi emphasized, that this was an innovation in terms of global trade. No other country on a national level has ever had an import conference. We always talk of exporting conferences, but not importing conferences. So in his mind, this is as innovative as you'll get. He talked about the wheels of history moving in the forward direction. And I think he's been also making references to the protectionist sentiments that are coming from the US right ahead of the midterms, which are happening right now. So I think for China, this is as open as you'll ever get China to be. And I think it's a welcome to African countries to take advantage to market the produce into those economies.
And that was my next question. Of course, you've been following this event. How have we seen African nations really take advantage of this event to push forward their engagement with China and suddenly reducing some of those trade deficits as well?
Well, obviously, they have to market what they call the competitive advantage. In Kenya, we have a competitive advantage in tea, in coffee, agricultural produce. Other countries like Angola and South Africa will talk about the natural resources, the natural minerals, because China is a very mineral-hungry economy. So that has been strategic. But my thinking is we've not done enough to push the conversation forward. Nobody's talking about innovation. How do we export innovation to places like China? Kenya is the hotbed for fintech. You know, we have M-Pesa technologies here. So I don't know why when these leaders, when they go to the West, always think it's always going to be about tea and coffee and the agricultural produce, when there's a lot more innovative work happening across Africa. We have a young, dynamic labor force, and I really hope they will be able to push the innovation idea, because according to the speech by President Xi Jinping, he was very big on innovation. He said he's going to invest in artificial intelligence, in digital economy, in things around blockchain. So those are the things that I think would be exciting, and I didn't hear that coming from the African leaders.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ken. We'd love to discuss it further. Of course, that was Ken Gichinga. He is the Chief Economist at Mentoria Economics.